comunicação, sejam bem-vindos a mais uma semana. Hoje a gente vai receber a Isabella. Ela vai falar um pouco sobre como fazer um posto de pesquisa. E ela formou pela Universidade de Auditório, em Física, e agora ela é pós-graduanda no MIT. E, bom, obrigada pela disponibilidade de estar aqui hoje. Vou começar a lista de presença. Tem um QR Code em cima da lista de presença, vocês podem escolher esse QR Code. A gente tem aquela folha hoje do QR Code que enviou, mas depois, se alguém tiver problema para fazer o certificado, a gente conversa no final do mês. Pessoal que está no YouTube, também vai ser passado o link do formulário de presença e do certificado que a gente vai solicitar. Pode começar com o que quiser.
Obrigada. Ok. Oi, pessoal. Obrigada por estar aqui. Eu estou muito animada para falar com vocês agora. Eu quero falar que eu vou falar em inglês para esta apresentação e um pouquinho português. Eu estou aprendendo, pues obrigada. Esta apresentação vai ser a construção de pósteres de pesquisas e vamos a começar. Oi, meu nome é Isabella Macias, ou Bella. Eu estou iniciando meu doutorado de MIT este setembro. Eu estou por USP já há 3 meses. Eu estou trabalhando com um projeto de águas vivas galáxias com a professora Gloria e a professora Angela. Também eu tenho experiência com a Universidade de Florida. Eu estava trabalhando em um projeto de estrelas, que são com metais pobres. Também tenho experiência com asteroides de Caltech. E, por final, tenho experiência com exoluas e exoplanetas de MIT. Vou a começar meu doutorado de Protoplanetary Disk este setembro. Pues, estos pasados 3-4 anos de mi undergraduate years, eu ganhei muita experiência com a construção de pósteres. Eu ganhei muitos prêmios por Estados Unidos e então estou aqui para falar com vocês umas coisas que eu aprendi nesses passados anos. Pues, obrigada. Em princípio, eu quero fazer uma visão geral dessa apresentação. Vou falar primeiro, na primeira parte, da estrutura básica de pósteres. Vou falar coisas como sessões de pósteres, também de texto de pesquisa. A segunda parte vai ser mais interessante para os pós-graduação. Não vou falar somente de pósteres simples, mas também de pósteres melhores. Vou introduzir a Canva, um programa melhor para as graduações estudantes. Também vou finalizar esta apresentação com uns exemplos de pósteres de minha experiência e de estudantes nos Estados Unidos. Também tenho um link da página do movimento Astrobytes dos Estados Unidos, que se chama #BetterPoster, que falam um pouquinho de melhores posters para estudantes. A primeira secção de seu poster deve ser... A primeira secção de seu poster deve ser contexto. Essa secção deve apresentar a sua área em uma forma bastante ampla. Também é muito importante a definir sua terminologia muito simples a las pessoas. Também, nesta secção, deve apresentar a sua subcampo básico e também a explicar como este subcampo introduz ao campo principal de sua área. Também é importante indicar a pergunta que sua área está tratando a contestar e a responder, e também as limitações de sua área. So I'm going to go a little bit back and forth between English and Portuguese. As you can see, I'm still practicing my Portuguese a little bit. But basically, the first section I'm going to be talking about is the context section. So why this section is extremely important is because a lot of people that are going to be listening to your poster probably don't know what field you're in and probably don't know a lot about your field, possibly. So we're going to talk about this in an hourglass figure sort of way. So we're going to start off very broadly. If you're doing research in the field, let's say stellar astrophysics, you want to introduce what stellar astrophysics is. You want to slowly start defining exactly what you're working on. If you're in stellar astrophysics, you're doing stellar archaeology. If you're looking into metal poor stars, that's when you want to start defining things a little bit more specifically. You want to explain the terminology, the definitions, the words that you'll be using, specifically the ones that you'll be using, so people can understand what you'll be mentioning throughout the poster. And finally, as we get a little bit more definitive, you want to start explaining what question are you answering? Why is the research that you're doing important? What are the limitations currently in the field? What are we trying to solve? El próximo sección va a ser métodos. En esta sección de precisa explicar cada etapa de su proyecto en orden secuencial. También use afirmaciones ello, como ello aprendí, ello analicé, ello programé, por ejemplo. También, si ten images, usan images, por favor, muestra esos datos. So like I'm saying in Portuguese, once I get to reaffirm in English, what this section is on is the method section, the métodos. This should be your clearest, most straightforward section. I know it sounds very counterintuitive because you're probably thinking, okay, Bella, this is a section, this is what I have done throughout the entire project. I want to talk so much about it. I understand, that's fair, but the people at the end of the day care a little bit less about what you did to get there. They want to hear more about the results. So you want to be very clear, very straightforward. You want to not write an entire paragraph. And I know you want to because you want to explain to people all of the beautiful things that you did throughout the research project. But you want to be extremely straightforward. I did this. I analyzed that. I worked on this. I mean, you want to make it sequential order so it is very easy to follow. I would also recommend include images. If you're analyzing an asteroid, show the asteroid. It's cool. I would bet that it's very common for a majority of us that are in astrophysics to be interested in astrophysics because we saw something cool. So show people the cool things you're working on. Very easy, very straightforward. El próximo sección es el gráficos. Esa sección es el más importante, el más grande, porque estás mostrando a sus datos de su pesquisa y de su póster. También es muy importante para compartir or para, I'm going to switch to English for this one. It is very important in this section to make sure that the colors on your graphic are matching and it's visible with the white background. You're not going to want to have a graph that is a very light white or blue color if it's going to be lost to the background. Like I was mentioning before, this section should be the biggest, most important section. This is the results. This is everything that you've been working on has going to be resulting in this graphic, in this plot. The first thing that people will see when they look at your poster is your plot. And I'm going to mention this a little bit later on in the better poster section. But basically, one thing I would also recommend is making sure that you're not going to have this type of mal ejemplo. We're going more for the boa ejemplo. So as you can see here, the reason that I'm labeling it as a bad example is because it is from as far as the back of the room, it is very hard to see the very small plots here. But it is very easy to see the very large plot that I have to the lower right corner. Now, another thing that most people tend to forget is that there are individuals that are colorblind. And it is very important to make sure that our science community is as inclusive as possible. So one thing I would recommend to you all is to challenge yourself. I would recommend to look online. There's many websites for scientific community where we can look at colors that are seeable and visible to a person that is colorblind. So that is another thing I would definitely recommend. Vos no puede tener gráficos sin leyendas. Las leyendas no debe explicar por qué los gráficos son importantes, debe explicar qué está pasando en sus gráficos. Like I mentioned in Portuguese, this is really important. You can't have plots without the legends. There has been so many times I have seen plots without the legends. This is one of the biggest mistakes you can make when you're first creating a poster. You want to make sure that you're not explaining why the graphic is important. You want to explain exactly what is going on in this graphic, what is going on in this plot. Another mistake that I definitely see throughout my undergraduate and now my future graduate career is figure numbers. You want to be 100% clear on what figure you're referring to whenever you're talking about in the results section, which is going to be next up. But the reason I have this example up here is because the reason it's very easy to confuse figure 1 with figure 1A, figure 1B, figure 1C. So you want to be extremely straightforward on what plot you're referring to when you're talking, not only in your presentation, but when you're referring it in your poster, in your journal, or your future paper as well. The one last thing I would also want to include is have citations. Please have citations, because I am willing to also bet with you guys that if people are going to be looking at your plots, and if you have other people's data or asteroids that have already been analyzed before on your graph and on your plots to demonstrate some sort of comparison, then they're going to ask you, the first thing they're going to ask you is, where did this paper come from? Where did this data come from? And it is very hard to remember all of the papers off the top of your head, so just write them down. And the caption is the perfect place for you to do that. Os resultados. Esta próxima sección es también una de las más importantes. En esta sección vas a explicar por qué sus gráficos son importantes y también vas a explicar qué encontró en su proyecto. So, like once again, my very bad Portuguese was explaining, what you're going to basically talk about in this section is your relationship with the plots, with the graphs. And what's even better, what you can possibly do, is talk about the connection between the plots. There's been so many times where I've seen the best poster presentations have won awards, that have won prizes, is because not only are they talking about, okay, this is the impact of each of these plots separately, but you're talking about the overall connection between the plots. Overall, what is this showing? What are we getting out of the results? Because as soon as someone's going to look at your poster, they're going to once again go straight to your plots, and then they're going to see what were the results. What did you accomplish? What did you find? Another thing that I would highly recommend is make sure that it's clear. Make sure it's very straightforward to understand, because one thing I would also recommend is making sure that it's bold. Italicize any piece of information that is going to be useful for the observer to understand. Y en sección final es pesquisa futura. Aquí vas a explicar qué te precisa hacer para su proyecto y también qué fue su impacto de su pesquisa de proyecto. So basically what I'm saying here is this is going to be your final section. So what I mentioned from the beginning at the context, we started off very broadly. We started off explaining what was your field, what exactly are you doing. We got a little bit narrowed down with definitions, with your graphics, with your plots, with the results. And now we're going back broad again. All right, so these are the things that you accomplished. What is next? A lot of the time when you are going to present your first poster, you're not going to be done. You're not going to probably be any close to done. You're going to show probably preliminary results, which is 100% fine. What you want to do then is explain where I'm going to go next. What do I need to do in order to wrap up this project? Do I need to run another few simulations? Do I need to talk to some collaborators? Do I need to take more data, explain that, mention that? And people are going to be curious, and maybe you will find another collaborator when you actually present this. Another thing that you want to do is make sure that you explain how you contributed to the field. How did you give back to the field, basically? What did you really answer? And the best scientists, the best posters always explain, what can you do with my research? A better scientist, and once again, this whole presentation is about better posters. A better scientist talks about what type of research, what types of projects can you continue doing using my own project. That's when you start getting into when you become a graduate student, when you become a postdoc, you're going to come up with these ideas. And this is the perfect time to start practicing those creativity skills. So this is where basically the end of my Portuguese stops, basically. En un ejemplo básico de estructura de poster. So once again, this is the very simple version of what a poster should look like. We have the context, the methods, the very big graphics that you can see from the other side of the room. The legends. The results should also be very big, and we ended up with a beautiful future research section. Now, before I get into the very, very interesting part, I do want to go over some standards. when I was starting off making posters, I was extremely confused because I did not know, okay, what's the typical font size? What types of font styles should I be using? What should this whole thing look like? So I figured just to make a little bit more of a little bit easier for you guys and talk about what standards should we basically rely on. I would say, especially if you're using Canva, which I will be talking about in the next section, use a font size 32 to 40. Don't have it any, and when I say 32 to 40, that means the legends. The smallest things should not be less than 32 font size. Because, sorry, because you don't want people to be squinting even 1 feet away from your poster. But I've been able to talk to my collaborators and talk to my colleagues, and this is what we decided to be usually the best range of font size. I would also recommend for styles of font. I have seen a lot of bad examples demonstrating font sizes or font styles that are very goofy. And I am all for showing creativity and all for showing your personality in your poster. However, it is a demonstration of your professional work. At the end of the day, this is what you came up with, and this is what you want to explain professionally. So when I see some very signature-esque, curvy styles that I can't read for a title, that's where I'm like, okay, that's not great. So you want it to be legible. You don't want it to be goofy. You want to be professional. So stick with Times New Roman. No one could do anything bad with Times New Roman. If you want to switch it up a little bit, do front fits. And as I mentioned before, do not do paragraphs. Do not do paragraphs. And I had to talk to one of my mentors before, actually, because they were actually very set on me trying to do paragraphs, but I explained how much of better feedback I got in my previous posters from doing bullet points. It is a lot more straightforward. Cannot emphasize enough that how easily intimidated people are, even me, easily intimidated from seeing a big block of just words. You're less likely to read it. But if it's nice little bullet points, nice little short sentences, then it's more appealing to go to the person like, oh, this is very interesting. I understand exactly what you're doing. Tell me more. Now, I'm going to talk about this as well in the next section, but good. Colors. Stick with black and white. And the reason I'm saying that is because everything else I'm going to talk about from here on out is going to be very colorful. But for text, just stick to black and white. And then finally, make things legible, make things readable. Make sure to do a test. I always love to do a test. I print out an actual copy of my poster, a very baby version, I guess, and I see how far I can actually be able to read it from. And I test it with my friends. Can you read it from this distance? Yes? Okay, we're good to go. Now, we're moving on to my favorite part. This is the better poster movement part. How to make a better poster, you may be asking yourself. Well, I'm going to be introducing a program called Canva. Maybe you guys have heard of it. It's used a lot in the marketing scene, which kind of sounds counterintuitive because you're like, okay, I'm not a marketing major. Why am I going to use a program for marketing? The reason why, and I have mentioned this before, I'm willing to bet that a majority of us are interested in astrophysics because we saw something cool. We saw something colorful, we saw something interesting, and then we read more about it, we asked more about it, and then now we're in the field. Nothing in astrophysics is white. And I see a lot of white posters out there. So, and that's what I'm going to talk about in the next section. But basically, the perfect thing about Canva is you're able to personalize your poster. You're able to showcase your personality, show what type of scientist you are. And that's where we're going to get into next. So like I'm saying, nothing in astrophysics is white. And I see a lot of white poster backgrounds when we have so many things we can use as the fundo, as the background. I know it's sometimes a little bit weird to see a little bit of a darker background for a poster. However, I can assure you, even if you use a colorful image as your background, you're more likely to stand out immediately. Every single time I'm participating in a poster conference or a poster contest in a conference, I am the one with the crowd because I have a dark or bright, very bright colored poster. So what you start off with, before you even get to the words, before you even get to the research, pick a background, any background. And of course, we're going to need text boxes. The really great thing that I love about Canva is that it already has implemented like a shapes feature. I know lots of people like to do like little squares, which is fine. I am a little bit of a square hater. However, with this built-in tool, what you can use is different shapes, squares, rounded squares, circles, triangles, whatever your heart's content. And you could actually, what's really interesting, mess with the parameters. You guys know what parameters are. But basically, you can mess with the transparency. You can actually make sure that, if you don't want a solid shape block with your text on it, instead you can make it transparent to show your background a little bit more. You can mess with the layers. Instead, if you're like, okay, Bella, that sounds boring. I don't want to use shapes. Like, what else does Canva provide me? Well, what you can also do is that there's an implemented search tool, which you can look up any little graphic design to your heart's content. If I'm doing a project on exoplanets, I can look up little planet things, and I can basically use that as my text box, making things a little bit more interesting. Okay, so we have the background. Cool. We have our text box. As you can see here, I literally did what I just said. I grabbed some little planets. I smacked that little circle on it. Now I have my text box. What about the title? I literally have it on here. Be funny. Be funny. There's been so many times where it was not even my background. It was my poster title that got a big group of people swarming my way, coming to me like, oh my God, your poster title is so funny. I'm laughing. Tell me about your project's on. They're not even interested in science until they get to tell me about how funny my title is. I know this can be a little bit tough because sometimes we have orientadores, we have mentors that are very set in being very professional and be very, not funny, very professional, which is fair, understandable. I've had this conversation with some of my mentors, some of my orientadores before as well. But what I always recommend is go into the conversation like, listen, I respect your opinion. I agree, I should have a very professional title. However, what if I also added a little funny title up here? Then they love it. What I always like to do is try to come up with a theme. Sometimes I even use ChatGPT to come up with some ideas, and I can look through them and make them better, of course. But what I would recommend is having a funny format, a funny title format, and then as a subtitle, then your orientador, your mentor can come in with, this is the professional specific title that you should go with. Always, of course, have your name, have your mentor's name, have your universities that you're associated with. But trust me, this is more likely to get people invested in asking questions about your poster. And try to incorporate themes. I personally love an 80s theme, but I've seen people do colors or other random funny things as well. Okay, I had mentioned before, I was going to get to a color palette. This is the slide about the color palette. Whoops. But basically, one of the best things about using this platform, this program, and why you should be incorporating this into your construction de poster, is because there's a tool for colors where it identifies the key palette in your background. I like my posters to be pretty. I think it just gets a lot more audience that way. And if you're like me, okay, so I'm doing supernovae. I have a beautiful supernovae background. I have the funny title. I have the serious title. I have my text box. What colors am I using? You don't want to make, don't get me wrong, beautiful rainbows are great, but you want a little bit of organization there. So what you can do is use a color selector. Oh, not Siri. Okay, what you want to do is select the color background identifier. And what it does is it automatically pinpoints the main colors in your background. Wow, beautiful. Makes your life so much easier. If you're like, okay, that's not what I want to do. I want to pick my own colors. Okay, totally fine. You have a little eyedrop tool, and you can pick whatever color you want. Very easy, very simple. Definitely makes your science a lot more effective because, once again, it is appealing. It grabs people's attention. You will be a better scientist if more people are coming to your poster and you're presenting your skills more. And that's why I mentioned beforehand to have your text in preto, blanco, black or white, because everything else in your project and everything else in your poster will be extremely colorful. But also, like I mentioned before as well, make sure that you're picking colors that are preferably visible by colorblind people. But make it pretty. Okay, so we're moving on to some extras that I want to mention. So basically, I know you're reading like rabiscos. Yes, doodles. Love doodles. The reason I love doodles is because I get a lot. This is mostly aimed at the undergrads, but this gets a lot of undergraduates like, oh my God, this is such a cute little doodle. Tell me more about what your project is on. Once again, there's a search tool. You can look up as many doodles to your heart's content. If you're working on stars, you're working on planets, you're working on black holes, etc. También there has the logotipo da universidade. Include your university logo. The reason why is because, you go here, you want to represent USP first of all. It's this great university, as I know from being here for 3 months. But also because you want to mention all of the collaborators you're working with. If you're working with NASA, include that. If you're working with a university in the United States or in Germany or etc. More logos, the better. Because, like I mentioned before, it's all about networking. Eventually, like I mentioned, you are moving from undergrad to grad school, from grad school to postdoc, from postdoc to professorship, as long as you, once again, stay in academia. If people see what university you're associated with, they're more likely to talk to you. Like, hey, you're a Gators fan from the University of Florida. I went there, or I'm going to be a postdoc there, or I'm going to be a professor there. They're more likely to talk to you. Being a good scientist is not only being a good researcher, it is also being a good presenter, being a good networker. So you can start that with the basics with creating a very good poster. Next thing, Kuriko QR code. Okay, so the reason I say this, and this is also a really important take that I want to talk about, is because you have lots of things to share just besides your research. Your personal contact information, your personal website. Even better, if you already have a research paper on the poster that you're presenting about, include that. Include that always. Show people the paper that you're talking about. I know I personally like to put my LinkedIn, which is an American thing. I know you guys have something similar here in Brazil, but show off your contact information because there has been so many times where I couldn't talk to everyone. There were so many people asking me questions about my research. I'm like, oh my God, scan my QR code, reach out to me later. And they do. And then they ask me things like, oh, what grad school are you going to? What research are you interested in? Oh, maybe I can help you with this. This gets the conversation going. This allows you to be part of the scientific community that you're in. And once again, networking. Last one, also my favorite one. This in English means headshot, which means something completely different here apparently. But basically, photo perfil. So this, once again, headshot, picture of your face. The reason I say this, and people are like, why? I don't want to show my face. Reason why is because, trust me, you're not going to be next to your poster 24/7. You will need to use the restroom. You will want to see your friend's poster. You will want to go get food. There will be a reason you will step away from your poster. Why you should have a headshot is because, personally, I had a poster and I had my face on it. It was my face with a purple shirt. I was also presenting in a purple shirt. I stepped away for 5 minutes. Later on, after the whole conference ended, someone saw me and like, oh my God, you're the girl with the purple poster and the purple face and the purple shirt. I have a question about your research, and we ended up having a conversation. And now this person is very interested in my research. So once again, forming a community, improving your presentation skills, and this can be by implementing very simple things in your poster. So, juntaros las cosas, put the things together. We have your beautiful headshot, which I came up with ChatGPT. Your logos, a funny title, the series title, all of the sections that we mentioned. The plots that I said are very important, very easy to read. So I'm gonna give you guys some examples. These examples are not only from my personal posters, but also from students from the University of Florida and from other universities in the United States. But this one that I'm mentioning is because this student did a phenomenal job with all of her logos for her universities, to the point where she started a conversation with someone from Notre Dame, and now she's there this summer. So, all about networking. Plus, the words are very large, very easy to read. Very good thumbs up. Another example I have here is a friend of mine, actually. She did phenomenal. I think she won an award for this poster. Very bright, very colorful plots. The first thing that I remember people were saying and noticing was that they saw the big planets next to this on the poster. Like, oh wow, this is very interesting. These are very cool planets. I have questions. And it led her, I believe, to winning a prize because of this. Of course, I'm going to mention my own as well. This is the one I actually talked about with the purple shirt, as you can see. I was presenting in a purple shirt. So do that. If you can color coordinate, even better. People will notice, and people will want to talk to you. But the reason I'm mentioning this one is I think I got a lot of positive remarks about the creativity behind this poster. I was doing a project on exoplanets and exomoons. We don't need to go into the details unless you want to. But basically, I was like, okay, I don't want to do typical, regular, blocky text box. Instead, I will put my planets and my moon on my poster, and it is very easy to know what type of research I'm doing. People saw a big purple poster. Once again, I will tell you, I was the only purple poster there, and that is why everyone went to the purple poster girl. Sit up like 3 times. Anyway, very interesting. Another one, actually the one that I did here, was a project on Aguas Vivas Galaxias. Got a lot of positive feedback on this one as well. Didn't win an award, there's no award, but it was very colorful. And I got a lot of good feedback on how large the graphics was, and this is another one that I'm incorporating as well because it's very easy to see the main graphic, the main plot, and to be able to ask questions. And of course, the last one, the one that actually did win me an award. This is my funniest one. I think I did the best with this one. I won a bun dance with somebody. For those of you that don't know, that's a very popular 80s song in the United States. I want to dance with somebody. So many people. Oh my God, so many. And this was right before I was applying for grad schools. This is the poster, I think, that got me into grad school because I was at a conference applying for a poster prize. And everyone wanted to talk to the girl with a funny title. Everyone wanted to see who came up with I want to butt dance with somebody. I had a QR code there. Want to contact me? Scan this code. Everyone was contacting me. Hey, are you applying to our grad school? You should apply to our grad school. So, very simple things. It's not always about the research. It is usually about the research, but it's not always. It is also, you can be a great scientist. You can do the most amazing research, but if you do not know how to present properly, then how are you going to become a scientist? And that is completely what this entire presentation is about. So with that, I am completely done with this presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me with my email. There are 2 QR codes. The first one is to the poster examples. Please use poster examples. They are interactive. You can copy little graphics. You can use them however you like. And then the second one is to this presentation. Thank you.
Foi uma excelente apresentação. Pessoal, quem tem perguntas, pode ser em português, pode ser em inglês, e a gente também vai auxiliar com o inglês, tá bom?
Very simple question. What do you think is the best thing for the poster? Because I saw some like this one more white, another more.
I see. Oh, orientation. I have never noticed a bad poster and depending on the orientation. I have done it, as you can see, both ways. I have noticed that it's very standard here in Brazil to have more of a vertical format. In the United States, it's more common to have a horizontal format. You can do it either way. Usually it doesn't matter. As long as you find a picture that goes with that vertical or horizontal format, it's totally fine. But it just depends on whatever country you're presenting in. I would say stick to the formats that is most common in that country. That is why I tried it the vertical way. But you cannot make a bad poster depending on the orientation. But that is still a good question. Obrigada.
E obrigada pela disponibilidade, Macias.
Sim, obrigada.
Uma emoção, então.